All right, this video is going to be a little bit different than normal, but it's probably the most important video I've ever done on this YouTube channel. If you're new here, be sure you subscribe. By the way, my channel's been growing like crazy thanks to this amazing community, you guys watching this video. But I want to talk about the Bitcoin problem and why Bitcoin is such a unique asset and an asset that I personally believe, and I believe this for a long time, I personally believe everybody needs to own some Bitcoin. And I'll explain to you why that is. And also explain to you how high I think Bitcoin could go this cycle. It's going to blow some minds, in my personal opinion. If you've been living under a rock, I have your back, because I'll tell you what's happened. Bitcoin has hit a new all-time high. Right now, we're at $68,865, just below an all-time high. And this is because of a huge supply crunch, which gets into this Bitcoin problem that I want to talk about, and this enormous wealth-building opportunity that I think investors have right now. So, the reason Bitcoin is hitting new all-time highs as we speak is because of this supply crunch. You'll see on the screen here 21 million Bitcoin. That's the total number of Bitcoin that will ever exist, ever. This will never change. We can't create more Bitcoin like you can every single other asset class. With every single other asset that exists, if that underlying value of the asset goes up, we just end up creating more of that asset. For example, if a stock price goes up, chances are a company is going to sell more shares to the public markets because they can capture more money and they can create more shares of their company. With housing, if investing in housing is very lucrative, at any point in time, we create more housing, which dilutes the overall value of the existing housing. And even with gold, probably the asset that's most closely compared to Bitcoin, if gold prices go up, there's going to be a huge rush to mine more gold and create more gold. Even though it technically has a finite supply, we can go out there and create more of that. With Bitcoin, you can't do it. Sure, with Bitcoin, as its price goes up, more and more people are going to want to mine Bitcoin. But a unique characteristic with Bitcoin is that no matter how many miners exist, or no matter how many miners chase Bitcoin and try and mine Bitcoin, there is a finite new daily supply that Bitcoin mining companies can get their hands on. Right now, that number sits at 900. There's 900 new Bitcoin issued and mined every single day. That cannot change. So for simplicity's sake, let's say you only have one Bitcoin miner, which was the case in the beginning of Bitcoin. Well, they're taking control of every single new Bitcoin that is available to be mined. But say that the price of Bitcoin goes up and it becomes a very profitable venture, so another participant gets into it and starts mining Bitcoin. Well, then all of a sudden you split that 900 Bitcoin pool in two, and if your computing power is the same between the two individuals, instead of mining 900 Bitcoin, those two entities just split the 900, 450, 450, or maybe a different ratio depending on how much computing power each party has. That's exactly what's happening right now with Bitcoin. And upcoming in April is an event that happens basically once every 4 years, where the daily new supply of Bitcoin gets cut in half. So it's going to go from 900 down to 450. And this is significant, again, because no matter how many people or entities want to go out there and mine new Bitcoin, they can only mine a total of 450 per day after this halving event takes place in April. So this finite supply is extremely unique to Bitcoin. There is zero other asset class out there like it. And this creates a supply crunch, and when you have buyers step in, the price of Bitcoin goes up really, really fast. Now, the reason Bitcoin has had such a strong start to this year, and the reason it's trading at all-time highs, is because Bitcoin ETFs got approved, where these Bitcoin ETFs every single day are buying anywhere between 3,000 to over 10,000 Bitcoin per day. So, for example, on Tuesday of this week, March 5th, when the ETFs combined, they purchased 10,718 Bitcoin. These Bitcoin ETFs purchased almost 12x the daily new supply of Bitcoin. And this is the next point I need to make. When you invest in Bitcoin, what you're doing, at least what I do and a lot of other Bitcoin investors are doing, is they're trying to hedge their financial risk and hedge their financial future and the risk, even if it's super small, that maybe someday our monetary system is going to fail us. Because every single monetary system that has ever existed in history has eventually failed. Maybe it's all of this money printing our government's doing, or maybe it's a different catalyst. But there is a risk greater than zero that our monetary system is going to fail. The US dollar is going to become worthless for one reason or another, and that's the risk you're hedging against if you own Bitcoin and have exposure to Bitcoin. Now, my point in saying this is that if you buy Bitcoin, you want to hold Bitcoin. So, for example, the company Tesla has purchased Bitcoin in the past. They more than likely want to hold on to that Bitcoin forever because it's a hedge on their balance sheet against the US dollar, and Bitcoin has performed very, very well. And then you have countries, literal countries in the world whose governments are purchasing Bitcoin. They're not selling Bitcoin. You have wealthy individuals, millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires, multi-billionaires that are also buying Bitcoin. Elon Musk owns Bitcoin, and he's holding Bitcoin. Then you have these Bitcoin ETFs that are buying and holding. And then you have Bitcoin mining companies, which some of them are public. I actually own one called the CleanSpark, if you're new to this channel. They too mine the new daily supply of Bitcoin, and they hold on to it. They're not selling it for the most part to the open market. And you also have the founder of Bitcoin, Satoshi's coins that are inaccessible, and you probably have millions of lost Bitcoins from early when Bitcoin was created, when people were trying to figure out how to use all the software. They probably lost millions of Bitcoins that will never be recovered. And all of a sudden, this 21 million Bitcoin that ever will exist seems like a very, very small number. If you think about it, divide 21 million Bitcoin by 100 million people. 100 million people. And it means that each individual person can own 0.21 Bitcoin. And that's saying the total supply will end up being 21 million, which we know it's going to be less than that. And the best part of all of this is there's no central bank. There's no government that can dictate Bitcoin or dictate the currency. They can't inflate Bitcoin. They can't create more of it. And so as a result of that, you have kind of a Bitcoin gold rush where people want to get their hands on as much Bitcoin as they can now because chances are, based on its limited supply that won't ever be increased, the value of one Bitcoin 10 years from now is going to be much higher than it's worth today in US dollars. Now, about 6 or 7 months ago, I gave a Bitcoin price prediction on my channel of $100,000 for 2024. At the time, people thought I was crazy and that it would never happen because at that time, Bitcoin was trading at $20,000. Well, in the blink of an eye, as a result of all of this buying pressure, Bitcoin has tripled. Now, I'm not one to just raise my price prediction on an asset because it's gone up. I'm going to stick with my $100,000 per Bitcoin this year in 2024, but just know there's a very realistic possibility that that prediction is going to prove to be low. In fact, the people that I talk to in this space, the Bitcoin space, whether it's these Bitcoin mining company executives or whether it's these people that run the Bitcoin ETFs, they actually think Bitcoin this year in 2024 will hit over $200,000 per Bitcoin after the Bitcoin halving event takes place in April, which is just about a month away from the date I'm making this video. And just one more note on these Bitcoin ETFs. My sources that are very familiar with these Bitcoin ETFs, and some of them run these ETFs, they've said that they can physically not buy enough Bitcoin. They're having to buy half a Bitcoin every single time because there literally aren't enough sellers. Nobody is selling their Bitcoin. So they're having to buy very small amounts of Bitcoin at a time, and usually for around a 10% premium. And because of this, the rumor is these Bitcoin ETFs have actually directly approached some Bitcoin mining companies looking to buy Bitcoin from those Bitcoin mining companies directly. So hopefully you can kind of see how there's really immense buying pressure and very limited supply of this commodity or asset, whatever you want to call it, currency, whatever you want to call it. And as a result of that, we're seeing the price go parabolic, and most likely over the next decade, it's going to continue to go up. I've been saying it for a couple years now, but I personally believe that every investor should have at least a small percentage of their portfolio exposed to Bitcoin. This is too good of an opportunity, and the bottom line is most of us are never going to see a supply crunch like this ever again in our lifetimes. So you might think if you're buying Bitcoin at all-time highs right now that it's overvalued and it's going to go back down, and maybe it will. But when you buy Bitcoin, you shouldn't think of it in US dollar value. You should think of it in amount of Bitcoin you have. Because years from now, regardless of today's price, Bitcoin's probably going to be worth a lot more than it is even if you're buying at $68,000 today. Now, that being said, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I would share it with you because I want everybody to get rich. That's my goal on this channel. But I don't have a crystal ball. These are just my thoughts right now on this situation. I think everybody needs exposure to this thing because, again, the supply crunch is a real problem, and that is the Bitcoin problem.